We're diving deep into how our earliest experiences shape our emotions.
Oh yeah, this is fascinating stuff.
We're looking at the work of Juha Klaavu.
A Jungian psychoanalyst.
Exactly.
With a really interesting perspective on what he calls,
Mental states of totality.
yeah, mental states of totality that infants experience.
It's not just about babies feeling happy or sad.
Right.
It's like their whole world is flooded with either
Her bliss.
pure bliss or overwhelming pain.
Klaavu really focuses in on that symbiotic stage of development.
Okay.
That period roughly from 2 to 6 months,
Uh-huh.
sometimes stretching to 2 years, where babies don't yet have a solid sense of self,
Right.
separate from their primary caregiver.
So they're experiencing emotions on a much grander scale than we do as adults?
Exactly. Much more all-encompassing.
I see.
Imagine a baby whose every need is met.
Okay.
You're held comforted the moment they show any distress.
Right.
Klaavu describes this as a total paradise universe, where the baby is enveloped in a feeling of pure bliss.
Yeah.
But this isn't just a fleeting feeling.
Right.
It's their entire reality.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
At that age, they don't have the capacity to tell the difference between themselves
Right.
and the world around them.
Exactly.
So everything just kind of washes over them.
Yes. And now imagine the opposite.
Okay.
The baby is hungry or cold or alone,
Uh-huh.
and their cries go unanswered.
And that,
This is what Klaavu refers to as the pain universe.
Yeah.
The baby doesn't just experience discomfort, they're
Yeah.
completely engulfed by it,
yeah.
feeling a sense of terror pain, even a kind of existential dread.
Wow. It sounds like
Yeah.
being thrown into a chaotic storm with no warning.
Yes.
No way to understand what's happening,
Exactly.
let alone how to make it stop.
That's a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And it gets at the heart of Klaavu's argument.
Okay.
These early experiences,
Uh-huh.
these mental states of totality, can have a profound impact on our development, even if we don't have conscious memories of them.
But if we don't remember them, how can they possibly influence us later in life?
That's a great question.
Is there research to support this?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
While we might not have specific memories,
Right.
neuroscientists have shown that early experiences actually shape the way our brains are wired,
Interesting.
particularly the development of neural pathways related to emotional regulation and stress response.
Okay.
These pathways are like the foundation of our emotional architecture,
Huh?
and those early mental states of totality play a role in their construction.
So even though those intense feelings fade from our conscious memory,
Yeah.
the imprint they leave on our brains can still affect how we react to things as adults.
Precisely.
It's a bit unsettling.
Let's say you were frequently left to cry for extended periods as a baby.
Okay.
You might not consciously remember those experiences, but your brain might have developed a heightened sensitivity to feelings of abandonment, or a tendency to react with intense anxiety in situations that trigger those early memories of being alone and distressed.
So then those early experiences aren't just about the feelings themselves,
Right.
but how they shape our brain's automatic responses to similar situations later on.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
This is one way that Klaavu's concept of mental states of totality moves beyond simple theory.
Okay.
It provides a framework for understanding how these powerful early experiences can become embedded in our neural pathways and continue to influence our emotional lives long after we've forgotten them.
This makes me think about how differently adults react to separation,
Oh, yeah,
even from loved ones.
absolutely.
For some, it triggers intense panic,
Right.
while others barely register it.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it points to how those early mental states of totality can manifest differently as we mature.
Okay.
Klaavu suggests that infants develop specific coping mechanisms to deal with these overwhelming feelings,
Uh-huh.
like dissociation and
Right.
non-integration.
So break those down for us.
Sure.
What exactly do dissociation and non-integration look like,
Okay.
both in infancy and later in life?
Let's get into that. So with dissociation and non-integration.
Right, these coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
How do they actually play out?
Well, imagine a baby who is repeatedly left to cry alone in their crib.
Okay.
They might eventually dissociate, essentially disconnecting from their feelings of distress as a way to survive that overwhelming experience.
They're just shutting down
Yeah, they have
to
to.
protect themselves.
Right. And as adults, these individuals might struggle to connect with their emotions
Oh, wow.
or have difficulty recognizing and expressing their needs.
So it's almost like they've learned to numb themselves
Exactly.
to certain emotions
Yeah.
because they were too intense to handle as a baby.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, what about non-integration?
So imagine a baby whose caregiver is emotionally volatile,
Okay.
swinging between affection and anger.
Right.
The infant might develop a kind of protective shield.
Blocking out the caregiver's emotional cues before they can even register.
So they're blocking it before it even gets in.
Yeah. And this can lead to difficulties with empathy
Uh-huh.
and forming secure attachments later in life.
Wow. It's like they've learned to shut down certain emotional pathways
Right.
to avoid being overwhelmed by unpredictable or intense feelings. Exactly. And what's important to remember is that these coping mechanisms,
Okay.
while initially protective,
Right.
can create challenges in adult relationships.
Okay, so someone who dissociates might struggle to connect deeply with others.
Exactly.
And someone who relies on non-integration might have difficulty trusting
Yes.
or reading emotional cues.
That's right.
This is all starting to make sense,
Good.
especially when I think about some of the relationship patterns I've seen
Yeah.
in my own life. But it also feels a little
Yeah.
predetermined. Like
Right.
if these early experiences are so powerful,
Right.
does that mean we're essentially stuck with these patterns?
That's common concern. But luckily, it's not a life sentence.
Okay, good.
While these early experiences create a foundation, it's not the whole story.
Right.
Our brains are incredibly adaptable,
Yeah.
what we call neuroplastic,
Uh-huh.
meaning we have the capacity to change and create new neural pathways throughout our lives.
So there's hope.
Absolutely.
But how do we actually go about rewiring those deeply ingrained patterns that stem from our infancy?
That's where the real work begins.
Okay.
It's about becoming aware of these unconscious patterns,
Right.
understanding how they might be connected to our early experiences,
Uh-huh.
and then actively working to create new ways of responding.
So it's not about trying to erase those early experiences, but
Right.
rather learning to understand and work with them.
Exactly. Therapy can be a valuable tool in this process.
Okay.
It provides a safe space to explore those early mental states of totality,
Mm-hmm.
process the emotions that were perhaps too overwhelming to handle at the time,
Yeah.
and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
So it's about bringing those unconscious patterns to the surface,
Right.
where we can start to understand and change them.
Yes. And it's not just about individual therapy.
Okay.
Creating secure and supportive relationships in our adult lives can also help to rewire those early neural pathways.
So our relationships can actually change our brains.
They can. When we experience consistent love care and responsiveness, it can literally change our brains, fostering a sense of safety and security
Oh, wow.
that might have been lacking in our earliest years.
So in a way, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to experience a kind of paradise universe
Yes.
in our adult relationships, helping to heal those early wounds.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it highlights the power of human connection to shape and reshape our emotional landscape, even years after those initial mental states of totality have faded from our conscious memory.
This is all incredibly insightful, but I have to admit,
Yeah.
it's also a bit daunting.
Okay.
It makes me wonder if these early experiences are so crucial. Is there anything we can do to prevent them from having a negative impact in the first place? It's like we're talking about building a house. If you don't have a strong foundation,
Right.
you're going to have to do a lot more work later on
It's a great analogy.
to make it stable.
Yeah. And
Okay.
while we can't entirely prevent infants from experiencing distress,
Right, of course.
we can create environments that promote resilience and healthy emotional development.
So what are some of the key ingredients for creating that kind of nurturing environment?
Well, responsiveness is a big one.
Okay.
When caregivers consistently meet an infant's needs, feeding them when they're hungry, comforting them when they're upset,
Right.
it helps the infant learn that distress isn't a permanent state.
So they learn that someone is there to help them
Exactly.
when they're having a hard time.
That's right. And that consistency builds a sense of safety and security, which is crucial for healthy attachment.
Yeah.
It's not about preventing negative emotions altogether, right?
But helping infants learn that those feelings can be managed and soothed.
It's like you were saying before about that safe harbor.
Exactly.
Like they know they can come back
Right.
from the storm.
That's a good way to think about it.
Right. And it's not just about reacting to those big moments of distress.
No, it's not.
Those small everyday interactions matter too.
Exactly.
A smile, a gentle touch, a
Absolutely.
soothing voice.
Those things all add up.
They all contribute to an infant's sense of well-being.
Precisely. And those seemingly insignificant significant moments can be just as powerful as the grand gestures.
I see.
They help build a foundation of trust and resilience that can last a lifetime.
That's really amazing to think about.
It is.
You know how these small acts of love and care
Right.
can have such a profound impact
They really can.
on a person?
It highlights the importance of those early years
Yeah.
and the responsibility we have as caregivers to create that nurturing environment.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about Juha Klaavu's ideas about these mental states of totality.
Yeah.
And it seems like even though these early experiences are often forgotten, they can shape who we are today.
Absolutely.
You know, how we respond emotionally and even how we relate to other people.
It's all connected.
This has been incredibly insightful.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I think it gives us a lot to think about, in terms of understanding ourselves and, trying to be better in our relationships.
And creating those healthy environments.
Yeah, and recognizing how important those early years really are.
It's a good reminder for all of us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into early emotional development.
It was my pleasure.